Good afternoon and welcome to this week's BizSmart Lunch and Learn webinar. We run weekly webinars there to provide advice and share knowledge on key business topics and specialist areas. Joining me today is BizSmart founder Kevin Brent. In today's webinar, Kevin will be helping us regain our business focus and direction. Before we start the webinar, may I ask you all to use the question mark function on your screen to post any questions that you may have, and Kevin will do his best to answer them all at the end of the session. I hope you enjoy this week's webinar. Kevin, over to you.
Thank you, Caroline, and welcome everyone. As Caroline said, we've got everyone on mute simply to avoid the background noise, but if you've got any questions, please do type in the panel on the right-hand side of your screen, and I will try to answer as many of those as we can at the end. So the topic of the webinar today is regaining business direction and focus. Now, we've all been there. We all start off with the greatest of intentions. We get diverted somewhere along the way, and perhaps we start off knowing exactly what it was that we were going to do for our customers, and then we find we're getting sucked into doing all sorts of extras. The customer just says, would you do this? Do you do that? And many of them end up being one-offs. And before we know it, we're probably working really hard, but perhaps wondering whether we're actually getting anywhere. And are we building the kind of business that we wanted to when we started out? Have we created a business that is capable of growing beyond perhaps what each one of us could do in any given day, given that there are only 24 hours in the day, apparently? So, in fact, if we consider the business life cycle as being similar to the human life cycle, so that is from conception through birth, infancy, teenage years, through to maturity and adulthood, the vast majority of businesses get stuck somewhere in between that infancy and that teenager side of things. So never quite fulfilling, like any teenager, never quite fulfilling, well, not like any teenager, but perhaps not fulfilling their true potential. So only about 4% of businesses actually make it to the point where the business is not totally reliant on the business owner working flat out to keep it going, and the business got to that point where the income is coming in, everything's working smoothly, and the business owner can actually take a little bit of time out and think about more strategically about the business rather than being sucked into the day-to-day activities. So for most of us running our own businesses, especially if we've been going for a couple of years or more, then there's something that is working. So we know we're doing something right. We know we've got customers that are buying our product or our service, but perhaps the business has taken over more of our lives than we intended. We're probably more in survival mode in terms of keeping our heads above the water, perhaps, or in this case, shredded paper, but than perhaps we intended. So it can perhaps at times be a little bit overwhelming, and we might even have times when we feel like going and even, God forbid, getting a job again. I don't know about you, but the thought of having a boss does not exactly fill me with much joy. So how do those 4 out of 100 businesses make it to adulthood where they seem in total control? How can some business owners seem to afford to take time out of the business and that the business will continue without them? And how can some business owners actually know in advance, accommodate in advance at the month starting that the overheads are covered and they're not scrabbling around day to day to pay the bills? Well, perhaps there's a magic bullet. Perhaps there's those 7 fantastic tips that everybody keeps promising that will suddenly transform our businesses. Well, you probably know better than that by now. And those of you that know me well will know probably what I think about these quick fix tips. And in a 20-minute webinar, I'm not going to be able to give you all of the answers to suddenly transform your business and get control over it. But there are things that you can do. We know it's not a simple, quick fix. It is more like a journey that we need to go on. And the idea of this webinar is simply to help the start of that journey. And like any journey, we need to know where we're going. So perhaps I can hear some of you saying, here we go again, you're going to tell me I need a clear vision, a clever vision or a mission statement. Well, kind of, and there is some of that. But think of it this way. If we want to succeed in business, then we need to have good leadership, we need to have good management. There shouldn't really be too much debate there. So what do we mean by leadership and management? basically, leadership is about doing the right things. So that's all about direction, strategy, focus. It's the what we do, so doing the right things. Management is about doing things right. And that's the tactics, the control side of things, the how we do it. So to succeed in business, we've agreed that we need good leadership and we need good management as well. And that leadership is about direction, about doing the right things. It's about knowing where we're headed and building a plan of how to get there. And at BizSmart, when we're working with clients, we always start there. If we don't know, if you don't know in your businesses what you stand for and what you're trying to achieve, where you're trying to get to, then how can you focus on the things that are important? How do you know what are the right things to do? So the first step in working out what you stand for, or your core ideology, are your core values. That's what drives you and what do you want your business to stand for. Now, if somebody had come to me when I was starting out in business and said, Kevin, let's sit down and work out your core values and the core values for that business, I probably would have said, yeah, later, I've got all these important things I need to do first. But the more that I've gone through my business life and the more businesses that I have seen, the ones that succeed are the ones that have a really good, strong set of core values and core purpose. So I commend to you that you do spend some time thinking about what drives you and what your business stands for. And what we're looking for are a handful. We don't want too many. Probably, certainly less than 10, probably more like 5 core values. And these are not just nice words that we're going to stick on the wall or stick on a website or put in a plan somewhere far away. These need to be authentic values that our business stands for, and we want it to stand for, basically for all time. So 100 years time sort of type stuff. And for each core value, we want to understand what it actually means. So you need a description for it, for each core value, not just the word itself. And if they're authentic core values, then you or your team or anyone else working in a business or around the business need to buy into them. So you need to make sure that they would agree. And ideally, if you've got a small team, you would develop these core values together. If you've got a larger team, then you might pick the functional heads to work that through. Discuss any differences of opinion that you have with it and come to a consensus, because certainly for the majority of us as a small business owner, those core values are going to be pretty much our core values because the business is basically us. But as the business grows, we need other people to buy into those core values. And if you've got that team, they will have some input into that. And there will be some times when actually they will challenge you on what you think the core values are. And you certainly need to listen to them. And they, as I say, they need to have bought into those core values. So just telling people what they are is not necessarily the right way about it. So if you discuss a difference of opinion and come to consensus, but then we need to test those core values for authenticity. And there are certain questions that we ask that help with that, and I'll probably send these out after the webinar. But those questions, there's 5 questions for authenticity for your core values. First one: if you were to start a new business, would you build it around this core value, regardless of the industry? So it needs to be something that's not just specific to industry; it's much more fundamental than that. Second question: would you want your business to stand for this core value in 100 years in the future? Third question: would you want your business to hold this value true, even if at some point it becomes a competitive disadvantage? It might sound a bit counterintuitive. If you think about it, there's some core values that actually might mean that in the short term you might lose some business. Question number 4: do you believe that those who do not share these core values, anybody working in your organization that don't share those core values, or that particular core value, do not belong in your business? So it needs to be something that all your people buy into and adhere to. And the 5th question: would you personally hold this value true even if you were not rewarded for it? So you need to ask those questions for each of the core values that you have. And if you can say yes to all of those questions, then that is an authentic core value. Once you've got a clear set of core values, then you need to make sure that your business actually lives those core values, that they're embedded in the organization. So how are you ensuring that your business lives these values and do not just pay lip service to them? Because otherwise they would become that list on a wall or on a bit of paper somewhere. So you can't just have superior customer service, for example. You need to be able to explain what that means. So look at it from the different aspects of your business. What does it mean from the sales side of things, from the delivery team, from the reception team, for your website, for quoting, the different parts of your business? What does superior customer service mean if that is your core value? And you need to do that for each of your core values. And think about also what it might mean for recruitment. What kind of people do you want in your organization, and how would you build those core values into your annual staff evaluations? And that's when these core values actually start to become meaningful, as opposed to just nice words. And if everybody in your organization is adhering to those, and if you're making sure that the customers effectively can see those core values coming through everything you do, that's when they really start to become powerful. So the second step in working out our core ideology, the thing that goes with those core values, is something we call the core purpose. And that sometimes will pull out some of those values. But the core purpose is what it is that you are really about. It's not just what you do, whether you answer the telephones or whatever it might be. It's you start with the what, but keep asking yourself, why do we do that? So it's why do we do that, or so what? What does that mean? What's the point of doing that? And if you keep asking that question or those questions until you'll end up with the real reason as to why you're in business. And that core purpose, good core purpose, should be inspiring. It should be something that you can go, yeah, that's why I get out of bed every morning. That's why I do what I do. But it should also do two other key things. It needs to help you think expansively about the things, about long-term possibilities and the range of activities that your business could do in the future. So it doesn't need to be too limiting. It doesn't want to be too limiting. But on the flip side of that, it should also help you decide what activities not to pursue. Because if something is outside, if an opportunity comes out outside of that core purpose, you should be able to say that actually doesn't fit with what we're about. So let's eliminate that from consideration. So let's give a couple of examples. So telephone call minding service that we work with. The what they do is answer those phones for the customers when the customers either can't answer the phone, or perhaps they don't want to. They actually want to have somebody else manage it for them. When this company asked themselves why they do that, and they went through that so what type process, they ended up with the core purpose as being creating the right impression for our customers. So if you think about that for a moment, you can see how that helps them to think about perhaps other potential activities they could do. For example, outbound calls. Most of what they were doing were inbound calls at that point. But outbound calls or telesales or whatever you want to call it fit very much in that core purpose. You're still creating that great first impression when you open up the conversation on the phone. But it also helps them to think about things they may want to do. So, for example, if they get those customers that come to them and say, "Oh, can you do all our admin for us? Can you do our PA sort of type stuff?" Then actually that doesn't really fit within the core purpose, and perhaps that's something that would be more of a distraction to what they're trying to do and would take away the focus from what they're really good at. Other examples, company businesses that you'll know well. 3M, you'll know them from Post-it notes. What you may not do is that they used to do all sorts of tapes. They do all sorts of, they are a multi-billion-dollar company, and they're in all sorts of different areas. There's lots of divisions to them. And what they decided was that their core purpose was solving unsolved problems innovatively. Because if you know any of the products that 3M come up with, they're always clever. They're always meeting a gap. There's a need where there is a solution that is required, and that it requires something quite clever and innovative to do that. So you wouldn't expect 3M to come up with a slightly better fridge, or I don't know, a lawnmower that will cut grass slightly shorter or something. That's not what you expect 3M to do. Other examples, you'll learn Nike. Theirs is quite an interesting one. Their core purpose is to experience the emotion of competition, winning and crushing competitors. So that's quite a fun one. Sony, to experience the sheer joy of advancing and applying technology for the benefit of the public. So you can see from Sony's point of view, it's all about the joy of technology, of new technology, and of applying that for the benefit of the public. So you can start to see how that fits with what Sony is about, perhaps as opposed to someone like Hewlett-Packard, who might do lots of technology stuff, but it's much more for the business sort of type sector. Walmart, another company that you'll know, their core purpose is to give ordinary folk the chance to buy the same things as rich people. So you can see how that perhaps fits very much with Asda and might explain the tie-up there. So a good core purpose, as you said, helps you think expansively about things you might want to do in the future, but also helps you to think about the things you might not want to do, and therefore gives you some element of starting to think about focus. And just like the core values, there are some authenticity tests that we use to help find out if that's a good, strong core purpose. So the first one of those is, do you find it inspiring? So is that what's going to get you out of bed every morning, even when things get a bit tough, which we all know they do? Second question, can you see that core purpose being valid 100 years from now? Because just like the core values, this is core ideology. This is forever stuff, really. Third question, does it help you think expansively about the activities you could do in the future? Fourth, does it help you decide what actions or activities that you might not want to pursue? 5, is it authentic? Is it true to what the business is about? Not just simply words that sound nice or you think you'd like to be, but actually that it is true, that what you genuinely are. And number 6, would other people who know the business, the staff, customers perhaps, suppliers, family, friends, would they greet that core purpose with enthusiasm, or would they go, it didn't sound about right, or yeah, so what, sort of type stuff? Will they greet that with enthusiasm? So a good core purpose will help us to think expansive about things you could do and also about the things you would not do. So it helps start to deliver on that focus, get some clarity on focus. And Steve Jobs put it in this way. I'll let you read through that slide, but he was very key, or very strong about the fact that actually focus doesn't mean saying yes to stuff. That's not what it means. What it means is being able to say no to hundreds of good ideas that there are out there. And we've worked with, just over the last 18 months or so, we've worked with a couple of hundred businesses, and I don't think there's any of those businesses that are short of ideas. That's not where businesses struggle. Most businesses have got some great ideas, and where they struggle is prioritizing those, because you just can't do everything. Maybe if you're a big corporate, you can do loads of things, but as a small business owner, we really need to be able to focus down and decide, yeah, that may well be a good opportunity, but it doesn't fit with what we're about, and actually we're better off doing the core of what we do. So focus is actually more about saying no to things than it is about saying yes to things. And if you don't know your core purpose and your core values, how do you know what to say no to? So good leadership and direction starts with understanding and communicating those core values and the core purpose. But as I said at the beginning, it doesn't end there. This is not the entire answer, and there are a couple more presentations along these lines on the website, and we'll be doing some more webinars along these lines. So there's some more that we'll do to take the next steps with this. One of the things that all of us need, and again will help, is to have a sounding board, because again, as small business owners, we can get very, very narrow-minded narrow-minded is the wrong word, but introverted and insular in our own businesses. And what we can all benefit from is being able to bounce some ideas off of other people that we trust to act as that sounding board, for one. So does it make sense? Does it fit with the core purpose? Okay, fine. But also to keep us accountable, because again, I may hate the idea of having a boss, and really one of the great thing about running your own business is not having a boss, but actually that's also the bad thing about running your own business, because you've got no one to keep you to task. So again, if you can have that network of people, or that sounding board of people, where they can bounce ideas off, or you can bounce ideas off them, but they can also help keep you accountable, that's great. And of course, if you don't have that, then that is one of the key things that you can get through BizSmart. That's one of the key aims of our crew room type service. So that's pretty much all I wanted to say now. So I think what we'll do is just throw the floor open to questions and take them as they come.
Great, thank you very much, Kevin. That was a great session. We're just going to wait now for some questions to come through. Just bear with us. Okay, the first question is from Jeff, and he asks, did 3M and those other organisations come up with their core purpose, looking back after the fact, as it were?
Great, okay. Good question. So I think what we're asking here is, we saw those, so we saw the core purpose for 3M, and we talked about Nike and the others. Did they, after having been in business for 10 or 20 years or something, look back and go, yeah, that must be what our core purpose is? The answer to that is no, very much not. They all those examples I gave, they set that core purpose very early on in their life, and that's what's driven them, and it's helped them to be the success that they have been, and to focus. And no, very much set the core purpose first, and then the business follows.
Okay, thank you. And Anton would like to know, how do you know where to start with your core values?
Okay, another great question. So I think what we're asking here then is, how do we get going on it? And when we're working with businesses, we do it in two possible ways. Really depends on how many people are in the room. If it's just one or two people in the room, we're just dealing with the business owner, then we start with a blank sheet of paper, and we start asking questions like, what's important, what drives you, what do you want people to be saying about your business, what makes you different from other people offering the same sort of service. So we start with those sort of questions, and we start with a blank piece of paper basically, and we write all sorts of things down, and then we try and pull them out and group them into like areas, if you like, and hone them down. If we've got a number of people, so say we've got a senior management team in the room, then what we'll often do is we will hand out sheets with core values written on them, or example core values. So I can't remember how many there are on there, but 30 or 40 words, and we'll get people to do a group exercise where individually they'll go around and they'll circle 10 that they think are core values, and then we'll debate them, and we'll try and cut those 10 down to 5. So if it's useful afterwards, I could probably send that sheet out to people so they can have a look. There's advantages and disadvantages doing that way. One is it does help with a wide group of people get down quickly, but the disadvantages, I'm sure some of you have spotted, is that there are only 30 or 40 words on there, and it might be that there's a core value that you have within your business that isn't on that sheet. And the tendency with a list is that people pick from a list as opposed to thinking outside the box. So you've got to be a little bit careful on how you play that.
Okay, thank you. Next question from Tim. What do you do if an opportunity comes up that doesn't fit with the core purpose but looks like a really good idea?
Right, well, as I kind of hinted during the presentation, thank you, Tim, that is when you have to be tough. If you have got a really good, strong core purpose, and you've got a business model that is working for that core purpose, and then you get things coming outside, you get an opportunity to come up that looks really interesting, but really does not fit, then you need to be strong with yourself and actually say, hang on a minute, that's a great opportunity, but it's for somebody else. If I really still believe in my core purpose for what my business is, then you have to be strong. And if you if you get to the point where it challenges your core purpose, because you think this opportunity is so great, then possibly, and I with a big caveat put this, then possibly your core purpose wasn't right. But really, if you've sat down properly, and the core purpose isn't something you do in 5 minutes, it's something that you would build up. You'd have a good go at it, and you test it around people, and you revisit it over a little bit of time. So hopefully, if you've done that properly, it should allow you to say no to these opportunities, because you just cannot do everything. And what will happen is you will end up pursuing all sorts of interesting opportunities and never making success of any of them.
Thank you. And a question from Louise, who would like to know, why did you start BizSmart Select?
Why did I start BizSmart Select? Okay, great. Because we wanted to help business owners to create value for themselves, and for their organisations. We wanted to help business owners to do that, to create something of value, to give them options within their business. And the idea of BizSmart Select, what we didn't want to do was to be people that just told other business owners what to do from the theory or from textbooks or whatever else. We wanted to pool the expertise from specialists, because no one person can know everything about everything. So what we've tried to do is to pull together a group of selected people running their own business, that are real practical business owners that can give that real practical specialist advice, where they perhaps know a little bit more about a particular topic than I do or somebody else does, and can bring that to the table. So that's why we did that. So thank you.
Okay, a question from Roger. There are a lot of experts selling core purpose sessions and have been for many years. Is there anyone that you could recommend?
Thank you, Roger. Well, I think I would, of course, recommend BizSmart. No question on that. We've got several core advisors, and we follow an established process, and we've done this a number of times now. And one of the things that we try to do with BizSmart Select is to just distill things down into what is absolutely essential for that business. So whilst we have a process, the way that we do these things, it is specifically aimed at that particular business at that time. So what comes out is very tailored, very practical, and we know that process works when we do that. So I don't think I'm going to recommend anybody else. Thank you, Roger, at the moment.
And a great question to finish on from Bernadette. What is BizSmart's core purpose?
Oh, well, that's okay. You're trying to put me on the spot. Fantastic. So if I'm saying how important core purpose and core values are, and we don't have them ourselves. So the BizSmart core purpose, our core purpose, I sort of half did it already, but our core purpose is to help business owners of small and medium-sized businesses to create value for themselves and their businesses through sound, practical support that is applicable to their business. So that is our core purpose. I hope that answers your question. Brilliant. You got any more, Caroline?
No, there aren't any more questions at the moment, but I'm sure if you have any more, you can email Kevin direct and he'll be happy to answer them. So I'll be sending out a copy of Kevin's presentation and his contact details to you all this afternoon. But I'd like to thank you again for joining us today. And what we are hoping is that you make this a regular slot in your calendar. We have a webinar every Tuesday at the same time, 12:30. So put it in your calendar and join us every week. Thank you very much, everybody.